Yeah, the NFL draft taking place over the weekend. 7 new players for the Cardinals. Lots of quarterback talk with the Shedeur Sanders stuff. It's always a treat when we get to talk football with our next guest. Hall of Famer, NFL Network personality, Kurt Warner joins us here on the Arizona Sports Line. Kurt, thanks for the time today. How are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. How we doing?
Good. We've been talking a lot, and the whole world's been talking a lot about the Shedeur Sanders situation, what transpired over the weekend. Had a first-round grade on most people's boards, falls to the 5th round. What did you make going in to the draft of Shedeur Sanders as a prospect, and what do you make of what he experienced over the weekend, Kurt?
Well, first, I mean, I think there's a lot to like, but you know, I was very outspoken just in terms of this class, where I thought, you know, you had Cam Ward, who had some unique traits, but then beyond that, I felt like the next 7, 8 guys were kind of all in the same mix. You know, it was what do you like? What skill set do they bring? Because everyone was a little bit different, but none of them necessarily, you know, separated themselves, you know, by a large margin. So, you know, I think what we saw, that kind of bared itself out a little bit with, you know, a number of other teams thought, you know, not that we don't like Shadour, but hey, we like this guy a little bit better. And we like this guy a little bit better. And when that starts happening, and when you only have really 4 or 5 teams, I think that's the other thing that is so easy to gloss over, is that, you know, a year ago we got 6 guys picked, you know, early. But if you go and look through the NFL, you know, I went back and kind of looked through it, and there was only, I think, 5, you know, guys that are projected starting quarterbacks that are going to be over 30 years old as we start the season.
Wow.
And, you know, you got Dak Prescott, who's 32, like a long ways to go, you know, and so maybe you go, okay, Matthew Stafford adds another team to the mix because maybe the Rams are going to go get the guy to be his, you know, successor. And maybe the Raiders, even though Geno's only 34. But, you know, that's the other part of it, is that we don't have a bunch of quarterback needy teams right now. And so although we expect these quarterbacks to get pushed up the draft board, when there's a bunch of needy teams and everybody's fighting for them, when there's only 4 or 5 teams, I think that's the other factor that played into this, where it's like most of these teams don't need a guy. And even if they had Shadour higher graded, it's like we're not going to spend a pick on a quarterback now because we've got a guy that's sitting there going to be playing for a long time. And so I think it was one thing after another. Maybe the most disappointing part is when there was so much hype. And, you know, I've heard some people allude to the fact that because it was Deion's son and because of, you know, the respect maybe for Deion or just, you know, the idea of, you know, being so much in the media, that it seemed like some of these guys or even some of the people in the NFL kind of, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but, you know, exaggerated a little bit maybe where they thought he would fall. And so we went into this draft hearing all this stuff, first round grade, probably first round or early second round. And it kind of seems now like maybe some of those people were inflating it a little bit. And that part's disappointing because I know Shadour and everybody goes into it with the idea, oh, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're hearing. And then it becomes such an epic storyline throughout the draft that maybe didn't need to be that epic if everybody was just kind of straightforward with where, you know, a lot of these teams saw him.
All right, as somebody who wrote the book on resilience, maybe I should rephrase that, as somebody who filmed the movie about resilience, what did the Shedeur Sanders humbling experience, what he felt throughout the draft, how is that affecting him based on what you felt and based on repeated stories of players who don't get the reward on draft day yet now are fueled to another level entirely?
Well, you know, it's another thing about the draft that I get it. You know, I didn't get my name called, you know, like anybody. You know, you want your name called first overall. You want your name called as high as it could possibly be called because, you know, because it's cool and because you've always wanted that. And I'm sure it's a part of, you know, stroking our ego going, I was a first round pick or I was a second round pick. But here's what I know is that to me is more pomp and circumstance because it's really just about getting the opportunity. And then once you get the opportunity, now it's show us how good you are. You know, I look at his situation in Cleveland and, I mean, you look at it. I mean, Deshaun Watson, we have no idea what the future is there, even though he didn't play very good football before the injury. So I don't believe his future is with Cleveland other than maybe we got to keep him on the roster because of how the contract played out. So now we're looking at, okay, Joe Flacco probably makes the team because he's that savvy vet that can come in and played well for him a couple years ago. So now we got 2 other spots for 2 rookie quarterbacks and Kenny Pickett, who's been discarded by a couple teams now. So at the end of the day, it's probably a great situation for him to be in because nobody has earned their stripes necessarily with that team.
Yeah.
And now everybody comes in with a clean slate and said, somebody prove it to us. And that to me was all I wanted. When I went to my first training camp in Green Bay with, Brett and Mark Brunell and Ty Detmer, I never got a shot. I was thinking, okay, only 4 guys there. I'm going to get some reps because there's only 4 of us. But the bottom line was when I went there, they said, we like these 3 guys. And unless something were to happen to one of these 3 guys, Kurt's not even going to get a chance. I don't believe that's the case in Cleveland because they don't have their guys.
Right.
So after it's all said and done, this may be a really, really good situation, even after the fall, for Shedeur Sanders to go in and not only have a chance to make the team, but have a chance to become a starter, with the Cleveland Browns, just because there's nothing really in front of him that's a proven commodity, and especially within that organization.
Kurt Warner, our guest here on Bickley and Marotta Mornings. We were talking about it earlier, Kurt, that maybe in recent NFL history, there's never been a number 1 overall pick at quarterback that's been less talked about due to the circumstances than Cam Ward in Tennessee. You mentioned he's got some unique traits. How confident are you that the Tennessee Titans have found their guy in Cam Ward?
I mean, I like a lot of what Cam does. I think there's a uniqueness. He reminded me a little bit, and again, you always hate to throw, comps out there, but, watching Patrick Mahomes in college, you could see the arm talent. You could see some crazy things that he did, some crazy playmaking. There was also a lot of flaws. There was a lot of technique issues and a lot of forcing of the football, depending on his right arm and believing he can make every throw. Those are the same kind of things I saw with Cam Ward. I think one thing that, Patrick has shown us over the years is that there was a method to all of that madness. That not only was he extremely talented, but he was extremely mentally gifted in terms of seeing and playing the game. Now, that's, to me, what I need to see from Cam. I'm not, sitting here saying, oh, he's a slam dunk. There's a lot to like, but I believe he's going to have to get better, just like all of these quarterbacks are going to have to get better if they're really going to thrive and shine at the NFL level, or they're going to have to play a little bit differently and show us there's more to them than we saw. But I like a lot of what Cam did, and the fact that he played 3 different places, he won 3 different places, he made those adjustments, he became a leader in every organization. I think all of that stuff bodes extremely well on who he is as a character guy, what he brings to the table. But you guys know me. I'm never one to anoint anybody, and I don't want to put that on these guys. Now it's time to go play. Now it's time to go prove and show people you can play between the lines at the highest level. And I hope all of these guys can do that, including Cam, and he's a starter and a star in this league for the next 15 years.
All right, what do you think the Steelers are going to do? They don't have a quarterback. Are they waiting on Aaron Rodgers? Are they going to trade for Kirk Cousins? What do you think their strategy is?
I mean, I think right now all their eggs are in the Rodgers basket. I just believe going in that that's kind of, Kirk Cousins, maybe a fallback opportunity there. But Kirk didn't play very well last year, and he wasn't healthy. And now, maybe he is now, and maybe we get, old Kirk back. But that's kind of a scary proposition, for me if I'm the Steelers, without knowing who he is and where he's at, although better than probably, Mason Rudolph and the guys that they have based on their track record. But I just believe that they had to, think going into this thing, Aaron's going to come, like, doesn't seem to be a lot of opportunities for Aaron either. So if he's going to play, this is going to be the best opportunity for him to play and have some success and be a playoff team and do what he wants to do. So I still believe they think Aaron Rodgers will be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that's their mode going forward. If that doesn't happen and Aaron says, I'm not going to play, I really don't know. Will Howard, I don't know what their plan was going in outside of knowing, hey, we really think this is going to end up with Aaron Rodgers here, so we don't have to push the envelope too much when it comes to the draft.
Kurt Warner, our guest here on Arizona Sports. In terms of the Cardinals and what they did in the draft, a lot of people went into it thinking, hey, whatever they need to do to help Kyler Murray in this pivotal season is probably should be their goal. They go very defense heavy, 6 out of
Yeah.
7 picks on the defensive side. They did draft a lineman in the 6th round, but are you a little bit surprised they didn't address offensive need more early on, Kurt?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll say surprised. I mean, I think, part of me thought, especially with where they were picking, there may be a good shot to get another wide receiver and add somebody to the mix there. But I think the more and more that we see the NFL and how it shapes out every year, the more and more you realize the trenches is where the best teams are winning year in and year out. And it's not always sexy, and especially in the draft, and especially in the first round. But the best teams in the league are the teams that dominate up front on both sides of the ball. And so that's where it doesn't surprise me as much anymore when these teams, go and get another interior offensive lineman or a defensive tackle, which a lot of times we think, okay, that's not real sexy. They're not going to have double-digit sacks, and they're not going to do anything that stands out. But you secure those areas of the field, and it bodes well for everybody else. And so, just knowing Monty a little bit like I do, it doesn't surprise me that, he didn't necessarily take the bait and go grab the shiny weapons. And he just said, hey, we're going to build this from inside out. That's where we can be good for the next 10 years. And then we fill in the outside pieces around that, feeling like they've got some good pieces anyways, with James and Trey and obviously Marvin. You got some decent pieces on offense to work with anyways. Let's secure the interior part of things so we can win there first.
Kurt, always a pleasure to get you on the show. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. We appreciate it.
You got it, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Kurt Warner, NFL Network, Pro Football Hall of Famer. I should have said that first. He joined us on the Arizona Sports Line.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.